and welcome to episode 4, Herfinance Talk. My name is Sue Diamond and I'm your host, and our goal is to help women create a better relationship with their money so they can live their best life. So thanks for joining us and investing in your financial well-being. Herfinance Talk is brought to you by the Herfinance Club, and our mission is to socialize the idea that it's okay for women to talk about money, because knowledge is power, and when that knowledge helps you become more independent, it translates to empowerment. Women empowering women is a mantra that we love to live by, and one that has helped inspire women for decades. Where would we be without each other? So that lends me into welcoming our guest this week, Dr. Faith Brown. So thank you for being here with us today. And Faith, well, she's a lady who juggles many hats. She's a counseling psychologist. She's a performance strategist, business mentor, adjunct professor, author, and speaker coaches individuals and corporate entities in posturing for the next level positioning. She specializes in relationships, leverages her more than 30 years in business to facilitate personal and professional development. Faith believes that personal growth is it's integral to the growth and sustainability of a business. And in addition to serving her clients from her private practice in New York City, Faith is helping women either launch new online businesses or migrate and scale existing businesses from offline into the digital space. And her goal is to close that wage gap by helping women achieve financial freedom and established legacy via online businesses, as she believes financial health is a big part of mental health. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And you are an amazing lady with all these different hats and your knowledge sphere. So I am so glad that you were able to take time to join us and share with our listeners today.
Oh my, Susan, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm in awe of this platform. You know, you said it, where would we be without women helping women, women empowering women? And this platform that you've established is doing just that. So thank you so much for the work that you do. And I'm super excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, well, likewise, of course. So I think, as based on everything that you do in your knowledge sphere, today's conversation is even more apropos, as May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
But before we kind of get into the meat of that topic, I would love for you to share with our listeners, your why. Why is it you do what you do?
Thank you so much. The need is just great, right? We've seen that need amplified, of course, over the past year and a half. But even prior to that, mental health is something that all of us absolutely need, because we live in a human body and we take care of our human body. But mental health was so stigmatized. And the truth is, that's the driver of everything we do. If our mental fortitude is not intact, it is very hard to be motivated to just get up out of bed every day, or to go to our jobs, or to wear all of the hats that we wear, such as mom, sister, brother, daughter, wife, or employee or employer. It's just hard to wear those hats if our mental fortitude is not where it should be. So a long time ago, in a different life, I spent about 30 years in corporate America, and mainly in the healthcare space. And in that space, I observed, physicians, because that's where I was. In undergrad, I majored psychology, so that had been a big part of my life, just observing behavior. And I always knew I wanted, to go into private practice one day. I just didn't know when that would be. And after, being in that space and watching that segment of business change and evolve over time, I had a front row seat into how that affected physicians. And so we know that if physicians are having a tough time, the rest of us may not stand a chance. So the statistics showed that a physician's health was in direct correlation with their patient's health. So if patients were doing good, you could almost bank that the physician was good. But if the physician was having a tough time, his or her patient population was likely having a tough time too. So I thought that a very interesting correlation. And it just made me kind of want to nosedive into who's caring for them. You know, they obviously need someone. And it was actually the oncologist who first raised their hands to say, hey, you know, we need help over here, because they see, you know, death and dying and grief, you know, on a very frequent basis, generations from perhaps the grandmother to the mother to the daughter, you know, and it's just, you know, heavy. So I found a niche, you know, I found a space where I thought I could make a difference. And fortunately, you know, I pursued that space, and it has been personally rewarding, and never so much though as over COVID. You know, when physicians, particularly in New York, where I am, where physicians unfortunately were falling right down alongside the patients that they were serving. So I had clients, you know, that I was seeing who had experienced death and dying on a massive scale in 1 week. They may have lost, you know, 5 to 10 patients, but also lost 2 or 3 colleagues in the same week. So I'm really glad that it ended up being something that just kind of naturally evolved for me, just being in this mental health space. And as I stated, if we don't have good, solid mental fortitude, and COVID has definitely tested that in so many ways, you know, that I'm glad that I pursued, you know, that route. Right.
And I mean, kudos to you and other mental health professionals, because I know a couple of women that I know that work in the private practice with psychology in the field, and they had said during COVID, they couldn't serve everybody that was coming. Though they said business tripled in a sense, because people were just dealing, just the mere fact, you know, if you're working from home, all of a sudden, but then I knew myself, it would be, you know, I was so used to being on my own at home. And of course, my daughter's growing up, and, you know, my husband's generally up, but it was like, I had to say, you know, well, you can't just walk in the office, because I could be having a private conversation, but I'm doing it via, you know, Zoom. So it was all these kind of little rules, and I'd be like, oh gosh, what are you doing home? I've got to take care of my business, and I don't need the noise in the background. So and for me, you know, I was used to working at home, and it was still a bit of a challenge. So I just can't imagine if you were dealing with educating your children at home, and both parents were home and trying to work from home. It was just, you need all the help you can get, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting gears was something that we weren't necessarily used to doing. We would do it in a very physical and nuanced way, right? When we leave the house on a Monday morning, we knew we were going to a place where professional decorum was the order of the day. When when our professional space became our home suddenly, many people didn't really know how to readily shift those gears, because we get up in the morning, get the kids ready, right? They hop in the car on the bus, and we drop them off, and then we're on our way. That entire routine went out the window. So it had to be like a serious mind shift, right? To determine, how do we do this thing? How do we care for the kids? How do we care for home? How do we get lunch for the children while I'm supposed to be on a meeting? You know, so learning to juggle all of that was quite cumbersome, you know, and quite clumsy, you know, for a lot of people, if you will, and depending on the space in terms of where you were in the world, right? Some people have lots of space, others do not. And we're trying to fit it all in and do it in a way that maintains professional decorum. And unfortunately, a lot of that went belly up, because there was no other way to do it. It's okay when you're in the office, I can knock on the door and go, may I come in? Are you on the phone? But when you're walking past the hallway or in my line of sight of the camera, it's totally different. So our rosters were overflowing. Suddenly the thing that was so stigmatized became commonplace. People were spinning, going, what do I do? You know, women particularly, you know, we are used to juggling, but we had to juggle so much more.
Yeah.
And everything was on our shoulders, right? We had to show up as we do, you know, for work, and then we had to try to be present for family. And it was just a lot to contend with. So your friends, the colleagues, the people you know in this space, absolutely busy.
So, and of course, we know COVID, it impacted people across the world, but statistic wise, it's shown that it's been much tougher on women's mental health. And we know kind of gender-based disparities existed prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic magnified that. And as we just kind of referenced, you know, essential workers in a number of instances because of the field were, you know, mothers and caregivers. And then we had women who were laid off or furloughed and still furloughed. The group I worked with up until January, the office is still closed in New York City. So, but then we look, I've come across women who took unpaid leave because the company were not being flexible enough with them because they needed to be home because the children were being schooled from home, or they had to leave their job due to those caretaker responsibilities. So I think it was the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they'd made an announcement in March of this year, and they said that more than 2.3 million women left the labor force since the beginning of the pandemic. And then the other thing was that they'd said 2 in 5 of the 12 point whatever it was million women's jobs that were lost between February and April haven't returned. So when I think about, you know, when we had spoken earlier this month, you know, you had talked about the direct correlation between health and well-being of oneself and the health and fortitude of, you know, business, and one reflects the other. And I think, you know, that's so true. And I would love for you to kind of expand on that for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our personal growth is directly tied to our professional growth. And anytime that is stunted by whatever it is, in this particular case, COVID, you know, it took us all by surprise. So there's no wonder that so many things that were everything that was growing came to a stop. It's like we have a desert land, right? Everything just came to a screeching halt. And you mentioned, you know, the almost 3 million women that have pivoted out of the workforce. Can you imagine, and I'm sure you can, you know, being a woman, being a woman expected to be the model employee, the model wife, the model mom, and in some cases, the model daughter, because we have so many who are stuck in the sandwich generation, right? They're taking care of small kids as well as their parents, you know, because who's taking care of mom and dad? And where is mom and dad? You know, where are they? Are they across town? Are they in a different state? Or are they in the home as well, right? So all of that weighs on our mental fortitude. It is just a heavy thing to try to get a routine in, to try to figure out, how do I do all of this? And some women just said, I can't, you know, they just surrendered and I can't do it all. I cannot do it all. And unfortunately, and even if I could, how about, I don't want to do it all. It is just, you know, you talk about burnout. You know, people are not only burnout on COVID, they're burnout on all these hats they're having to wear every day, day in and day out. You know, at least, when prior to COVID, there was the weekend and we had a reprieve and we could decide what we're going to do, right? If we were going to go on vacation or if we we're going to lie in bed an extra hour. during COVID, you were on the entire time, because at some point you had to get groceries in the house, and we had to wash them down and, abide by all of the protocols. So just weighed us all down. So the question really becomes, now that we have exited, there's been this mass exodus out of the workforce, right? How do women maintain their sense of financial freedom or financial fortitude? Or how do we rebuild? How do we create our own financial identity, from what seems to be ashes now? What do we do? Because many of us are very independent, and for many of us, it was his money, her money, and then our money. And so when many of us had to make some very interesting decisions, some that we wouldn't have otherwise made, particularly those who are perhaps vice presidents of companies, second in line, ready to take charge. How now do we turn this thing around for us? So that has kind of inspired some pivoting in my own business, if you will.
Right. I met myself as well. I guess that's the word of 2020, pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I played basketball, in high school, and that was one thing that we learned very well, how to pivot, how to protect whatever this thing is, from the enemy. So, we've had to become quite astute at that skill.
Yeah. I think, as you mentioned, like we talk about health as wealth as well. Yes. And there's two things for me that I had to make a determination what I wanted to do. Did I want to continue to work in New York City, although I wasn't going into New York City, or did I want to create my own business? And of course, we know there's always that worry about the ebbs and flows. Am I gonna, what am I giving up? But there's that. But the other side too, as I think about other women, in terms of, being laid off or having to give up their job because it doesn't work with, the role that they're now playing. And it's really worrisome, because we already know about the obvious gender pay gap, and they were talking that it was going to take another, 25 years to start trying to close that. And that was for white women. It wasn't for women of color and Hispanic women, where, there's lots of different pay rates. So we can't assume, that it's just one level. But they were saying the pandemic has put women back 20 years, just solely being out the workforce and then trying to get back in. So I guess for me, when I think about mental fortitude or mental toughness, as I think about it, is the ability for me to be able to focus on and execute, I guess, solutions when I'm facing, uncertainty and adversity. I think, the most important aspect of navigating uncertainty and business adversity is to be prepared mentally, right? Because I think, that might be 99% of the battle. But the trouble is, if you're like most people, it's really hard to get mentally focused and stay positive when you're dealing with matters of security, safety, employment, health, and of course, concern for the people that you love. So, it's really hard to think about higher level aspiration needs when you're operating at the bottom of Maslow's chart, right? But so can you help our listeners in terms of look at, how do we build this mental toughness so we can make room for the right headspace?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing that I want all women to know, everybody that's listening, is there is hope. There is absolute hope out here. There is hope. And so let's start here, because you encapsulated it beautifully, which is when we're worried about just how to survive in the world, right? How can we get to the higher thinking? So what it means is when we are thinking about our security, just how we're going to survive, about food, about safety, we're in the survival part of our brain. And as long as we're there, we're going to indeed shut off access to our thinking brain anyway, because we're in survival mode. That's where we are. So I'd want every woman to just stop and just take a breath for 10 seconds. Just stop. Just stop. Don't answer the phone. Don't answer to mom. Don't answer to anything. Just stop and breathe for 10 seconds to allow yourself to just take in the moment to know that you are alive. And in that moment, you are well, that the sky has not fallen, that you're absolutely okay. And now let's go to your thinking brain, because we've just carved a pathway to get there. As long as we're stressed, we can't get there. So now let me just tell you something. All of you 3 million women who've pivoted out, there is hope. There is one thing that has leveled the playing field. All of the statistics are saying, oh, we are set back 20 years. Yes, if you embrace the same paradigm, okay? If you embrace the fact that you have to work for someone else, you're absolutely right. But if you would entertain for a moment a different paradigm and go, is there another way? And absolutely there is, because there is something called the internet. I'm sure you've heard about it. As a matter of fact, that's what we're doing right now, right? It has a way of leveling the playing field. And I'm here to tell you, if you have a skill, and if you're a mom, trust me, you have a skill. You do have a skill. If you have a skill, that skill can be monetized. And it can be monetized to help usher in a new kind of financial freedom for yourself. You can free up more time, you can take care of your family, and you can establish financial legacy. You just need to know how to do it. But it starts with that. Do you have a skill? Do you cook? Do you organize? You manage a schedule, whatever it is. We can create something around that skill, monetize it, and have you on the road again to financial freedom. It can be done. So just breathe, and know that you do not have to go back into corporate America if you don't want to. So if you don't want that wage gap, if you don't want the equity disparity to be there, if you want to call your own shots because you now know what it's like to try to juggle all of these things, we can do it. We're women. We can do it. We can do it.
Right.
So yeah, there's a way to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, it is, I think about before the pandemic and during the pandemic. So before the pandemic, speaking with women who were indicating, oh, I'm getting ready to go back in the workforce. I've been out of my field for 10 years, but I don't know how I'm going to get back in. It's like, well, all right, how many how many kids do you have and how many sports are you managing? And it's just when we don't think about, as you say, all those skills, you don't have to physically be in a paid job. I mean, a lot of women who are volunteers or, they're at home mothers, but there are all these different skills that they're utilizing to be successful in what they're doing. And we tend not to think of that. So I think that's a really great point.
And the thing is, when you do it yourself, when you think about those skills, and we can sit down with anyone to really filter that, to just narrow that down to something you'd like to focus on, is that then you're not waiting for someone else to sign your check. Actually, if we monetize it, put it on the internet, you can make money in your sleep. You can make it while you're sleeping, because someone on the other side of the world needs to know how you do what you do. They're going to want to know. So there's a way for us to plan that, create it, and package it and offer it to the world, such that when we're sleeping, that mom in India, that mom on the, in Singapore, who's wondering, how do I manage all of this stuff? How do I do it? You have the answer that she's looking for, and we can monetize that. So you're not waiting on an employer to sign your check. You're not waiting on the government to approve another stimulus for you. Your livelihood is not dependent on anyone else. You can take control of this. Just know that you can. Just breathe and know that you can.
Right. Yeah. I think that was one of the things that I had looked at in terms of, from the financial side, not that I didn't feel I was being helpful, but you met with clients one-on-one, and looking at a digital platform, that then I thought, well, I can serve way more women
Yes,
that
absolutely.
way than I can, meeting one-on-one with somebody. So,
Yes,
and doing it from, my own home.
yes.
So that was really appealing to me.
Isn't
I
it?
was like, yeah, but I think some of the things, so maybe some of our listeners, and I hear what you're saying in terms of breathe and it can be done. But unfortunately, as women, and I have experienced this myself, we
Mm-hmm.
have a tendency to have
Mm-hmm.
that little inner critic
Sure,
or self-imposter syndrome going, oh
sure,
no, you can't
sure,
do that. You
sure,
don't have the experience to
sure.
do that.
Uh-huh.
And then we become our own worst enemy. So I know for me, it's kind of reframing those limiting beliefs, which also ties into money because that's what I do with my clients on the financial coaching side.
Yes,
It's
yes,
understand, you got to understand your money story, and then you have to position yourself to rewrite it. And I think, as you say, it's when we talked earlier, it was about, well, it's one thing to say we're going to rewrite it, but
yes.
how we rewrite it becomes the challenge, right?
Yes, yes. And the one thing that we women do very well is we support one another. So you get a good coach by your side. That's what you do. We don't know
Right,
what we can do until we try it. That inner critic
right,
every time is going to step in because that's the way the brain is really designed. It is designed to keep us safe. So that inner critic is really just your safety mechanism going overboard, saying, nope, stay safe. Nope, don't try it. Stay
yeah,
safe. But in this particular case, the safetiness will suffocate you. So
right,
you won't know what you can do until you try it. And what do you have to lose? What really
right,
do you have to lose? So your clients can say, you know what? Let me just call Susan up. Let me give this a try. Allow another woman to help coach you through this. We can do this
right,
because we understand where you are. No one understands another woman like another woman.
right,
So we
right,
can coach you through this and say, hear the voice and say, I'm going to do it anyway. Be afraid, but I'm
right,
going to do it anyway. I'm going to try it. I have nothing to lose in, just giving it a try. And I promise you, if you put your hands and your trust in someone who has a proven track record, right? A coach, and
right.
someone with whom your temperaments are compatible, the
Yes.
two, the two of you can come up with and strategize a plan to get you from point A to point B, get you
Right.
exactly where you want to be. So just know that we'll take you by the hand and we'll get you there.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I look at, well, I always like to go back to, New Year's
Oh
resolutions. So
yeah,
we know 95% of us don't keep them,
sure.
but it's because we don't have an accountability partner, right? We don't have someone to motivate us and rah us through. So I think, again, what you're saying, when you can work with somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
then you're gonna have much more success, because it's whether it's running or walking. I know myself, I love walking, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll plan to do it every day, but if I'm not doing it with somebody, I don't do it.
Sure,
So I
sure.
have two different friends, and we walk 2 different days each with each other. So I'm far less likely to cancel or negate
Yes,
going because I don't want
yes.
to let that person down. I'm going to
Right,
be like,
exactly.
oh no, I don't want her,
Yes,
is
yes.
that going to affect her? So I think, that there's those little nuances, right? That,
Absolutely,
we have.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. Accountability, and especially an accountability partner, are paramount to success because no man is an island. And when we can do it together, we tend to get there not only quicker, we get there more intact, right? Because there aren't as many stops and starts as there would be, if we were going it solo. But I tell you that to thine own self be true is to know really the way that we're wired. Oftentimes, those resolutions don't don't make it or don't see the light of day is because of what you talked about earlier, is safety. Our brain is just wired to stay safe, and we have to do something over and over and over and over and over and over. Repetition brings about mastery. It's not until we can do things over and over and over again that we give ourselves an opportunity to grow a new neural pathway for that new behavior. Otherwise, the old behavior that was there is going to always take over because the brain wants to keep you safe. But as long as that accountability partner is there, that's tapping us on the shoulder saying, hey girl, you got your sneakers on? Let's go. We're more inclined to get out and go, not listen to the excuse, not listen to the fact that, oh, it's a little chilly out or I have a headache. Come on, girl. Come on. I'm sure, in company, when we have company, because we're social creatures, that's who we are. We tend to get things done a lot quicker and we get there intact. Our mental fortitude is stronger when we do it with others. Yeah, you're right.
So I could talk to you all day about this. It's like, this is wonderful, but unfortunately our time is coming to an end. So I want people to know, where can they connect with you, Faith?
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me on any of the social media platforms. I'm at Dr. Dr. Faith Brown on Instagram and Dr. Faith Brown on Facebook. And feel free to reach out to me via email, drfaith@drfaithbrown.com. drfaith@drfaithbrown.com. Reach out to me. I'll be glad to talk to you, to strategize with you, just to kick it, to see where you are and what you want to do, and we'll craft a plan for you. So I'm sure Susan would as well. Susan, I'm so happy that you have this platform. I mean, the fact that you are hosting this gives all of us comfort. It lets all of us know there is hope for us, that once we can get over our own money story, we know that we can write it ourselves. So thank you so much for empowering us to do so. And I think together we can certainly make a difference.
Yes, and likewise. No, thank you, Faith, because I think it's important for everyone to hear, because again, as you mentioned earlier, kind of the mental health aspect was so stigmatized, and it's good for our listeners to know, because again, when we're not hearing anybody, we think it's just us.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
I think it's important for people to know, no, you're not alone out there. There are many other people in the same situation, and there are resources that you can access to help you get through this. So
absolutely. Susan, I'd like to say this really quickly. I know we got to go, but anytime we're faced with how are we going to pay tuition? How are we going to keep paying rent? How are we going to keep paying our mortgage? How are we going to pay insurance? That weighs on anyone's, mental health, right? So ladies, we understand the gravity of what you're going through and then how that seems so dead end. But there is another story to write. It doesn't end there. Thanks to Susan, she's going to give us the pen and we can write our own financial story.
Well, thank you, Faith, for sharing your insight and your expertise. It's been a pleasure. I will make sure that all your contact information is in the show notes, so our listeners know where they can reach you. And just as a quick reminder, as mentioned earlier, May is Mental Health Month, and it's a great reminder to take a few small steps to help improve both your financial and mental health. And, from my perspective, that starts with making better money decisions. So in celebration of Mental Health Month, I'm sharing a financial self-care guide. So you'll be able to access that through the show notes on how healthy financial care habits can keep you feeling positive and encouraged. So I just wanted to take the time to remind everybody, Herfinance Talk is brought to you by the Herfinance Club. And our goal is to get 1 million women to start the money conversation with spouse, friends, or colleagues, because knowledge is power, and when that knowledge helps you become more independent, it translates to empowerment. Yes. Thank you so much again, Dr. Faith Brown, for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners for taking time out of your schedules to tune in. And here's to your financial well-being until our next episode. So take care, everybody. Bye.